Hi guys, I'm Joe, this is Grassy Knoll, and around here we talk about Dungeons and Dragons. I have busted out my mid-range webcam to talk to you today about these critical fails, rolling a 1. Okay, yeah, rolling a 1, crit fails. Why, what do I like about them? What don't I like very much about them? Crit fails are a staple in D&D. Any player who has more than 1 or 2 games under their belt, they're gonna have a story about a really good plan that they had that fell apart, that was sundered by an unlucky roll of the dice. This is cool. I like this. I like being able to create kind of like unexpected conflict or like pressure in a session, or in like situations where it feels like everything is going in your party's favor. A good example is like the light-footed rogue padding silently behind the bugbear, readying her blade for a strike from the shadows until she steps on a twig on a dry branch and she alerts the bugbear to her presence, giving him enough time to call for backup from the goblins in his employment. And then you have a nice combat, you have a nice conflict that rises out of that because of this unlucky dice roll. I like that. I think that's cool. What's a good story without some kind of like some conflict? Anyway, but I think in spite of this, they can be really difficult to get right, and quite easy to get wrong as well. When they're handled poorly, they can at best be kind of like bad storytelling, and at worst make players feel like they're being sort of like punished for doing anything that requires a roll of the dice, and I feel like that makes them less likely to engage with the game world in any kind of like meaningful way. I think you always need to encourage and reward meaningful engagement with like your game world or with your system or whatever it is. By meaningful engagement, I basically mean anything your player would say they want to do that requires a dice roll. So whether it's like picking a lock, or interacting with an NPC, like you're trying to persuade them or deceive them or intimidate them, or you're searching for traps, or you're fighting dudes. This is all like meaningful engagement. Like there's stuff you can do that like arguably is meaningful without needing the dice rolls. Your NPC interaction, I'm less likely to ask for dice rolls from players who are getting like really into their character and they're really giving it some. But this is what I mean by meaningful interaction with the game, where like more often than not you are going to say to your player, make an ability check or something like that. So now we know kind of like where I'm coming from with this. I'm gonna talk a little bit about why I think that kind of crit fails can discourage this meaningful interaction. I'll start with kind of the vague unfairness of them. Anytime you roll, this is my big one here. Anytime you roll one of these, unless you're a halfling or you pick lucky or something like that, you have a 5% chance anytime you interact meaningfully with the game of failing, and not only failing, but failing and like then a bit extra. Like a crit fail is the worst thing that could possibly happen in that moment. Hey, it's me. We are in my bathroom because there's karaoke, construction, and kids playing outside, so I can't really record in my room right now. Just a quick programming note, I say here the worst thing that could possibly happen, which I think is a misstatement. The worst thing that could possibly happen is always probably going to be a TPK, and you don't want one of those every time you crit fail. And I think thinking about it in terms of the worst thing that could possibly happen is a bit of a mistake. I think what I'm trying to get at here is when a player rolls a 2, 3, or a 4 on a check, while it's unlikely to be a success, there's usually a little something that the DM can like give the player to point them in the right direction. So you don't scale the castle wall, but you see a point that's unguarded where you could possibly throw a grappling hook and climb up that way. A crit fail, however, is supposed to be a fail plus, And I think it's a moment where the resolution of that roll, more often than not, should be actively running counter to the party's goals. So the rope bridge that you're trying to lightly stab across gives way. The city guard you're trying to bribe into silence arrests you. It should be something that brings an additional dimension of difficulty to whatever difficult thing the party is already trying to accomplish. I only mention this because this is the first of maybe 5 times where I say the worst thing that could possibly happen, and I just wanted to try and clarify a bit more what I actually mean by that. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled train wreck. A crit fail is the worst thing that could possibly happen in that moment. That's a 5% chance just kind of like on paper. That's to say nothing about like how this actually shakes out, right? You can have just unlucky games. You can have like 2 or 3 crit fails in a session. If you're not handling it right, this 5%, because it's always there, it can discourage people from like doing anything that means they'd have to make a dice roll, because if they do, then there's always that chance, like even if they're the best, even if like they're the rogue and they have like a +7 to lockpicking or a +9 to convincing dudes to do stuff, there's always that 5% like lurking over your head. Let's take the rogue as an example. Let's take the rogue with their +7 to lockpicking. You're in a dungeon, you're in this big chamber, there is one door out of the chamber, and the door is locked. You haven't found a key, you haven't found any guards to pickpocket or anything like that. You have your trusty lockpicks, you have this door, and you have a rogue with this big bonus, this +7 to pick locks. They are the best person for this job. If they throw up a 1, then like what happens? Like if they throw up a 1, what do you say? Do you say, well, no, you don't pick the lock, like you suck, this one time you fail? It can work if you're handling it well. If you're not handling it well and you just say, no, you don't pick the lock, your lock picks break, you break your thieves' tools, but the door was trapped, it did some damage to you, but you don't pick the lock, you're still exactly where you started before this dice roll. That's kind of antithetical to how I play the game and how I think the game should be run, because I am the best at it and I know everything, so everyone needs to play it like I play it. There are times when I think it can feel like you are just having doors slammed in your face due to just this 5% chance that you always have at every time. You're just being told no. And I think it could make some players just want to not play. And I don't mean not play D&D, but just do stuff that means they don't have to roll unless it's like combat and they absolutely have to roll. And I just don't think that's cool. I don't think it's fun. I guess that's the kind of the crunchier side of it, like the more sort of like system based reason I'm not the biggest fan of crit fails all the time. Now, I guess let's talk about like the storytelling kind of aspect of it. I think like bad luck or just kind of like your brain being dumb sometimes. It happens all the time in the real world, like tripping up the stairs in school and like embarrassing yourself in front of everyone, saying like you too when someone wishes you happy birthday. Like this happens to us all the time. But like D&D isn't real life. Like it's fantastical, it's a thrilling adventure, and I think that kind of like incompetence, like that everyday crude incompetence, is just not very D&D-y. I think everyone's had the experience, maybe secondhand if not firsthand, of like their character attempting to do something that the character is like fully proficient in, throwing up a 1 and being told, no, you suck. Yes, you have a +9, but this one time you're an idiot. Again, it just feels unfair, or like a bit it doesn't feel like good storytelling. Luke Skywalker, for example, I don't know why my pull is from the sci-fi rather than like just an actual high fantasy thing. Oh, and spoilers for The Empire Strikes Back. just FYI. His hand doesn't get cut off because he's dumb, right? He makes a series of decisions that culminate in the loss of his hand. He's training with Yoda. He discovers that his friends are in trouble and he wants to go and save them. And Yoda says, no, your training is not complete. If you go to save them, you will have to fight Darth Vader and you will lose. But he does it anyway, and as a result, he loses the fight. He loses his hand. It's serious, but it all feels earned, and I think that's what makes good storytelling. He doesn't lose his hand because he trips on his bootlace and cuts his hand off. He doesn't sneeze, he doesn't get some Cloud City gas up his nose and just kind of goes and cuts his hand off. Okay, so we're obviously not novelists, we're not screenwriters, we're DMs. In terms of the rungs of creatives or storytellers, we are probably down here, just above the dirty limerick writers. But I still think that this kind of this sense of stuff feeling earned should it carries through. It's kind of one of the basic things of storytelling, because that's how it works. You need to be able to track the cause and effect of stuff. That's why I think it feels off. I think it feels off when your rogue with +7 thieves tools can't pick open the lock to a door to a farmhouse or something because it's because they roll a 1. Your barbarian with +6 strength can't knock it down. It doesn't fit, and I just think it feels a bit cheesy. I'm not a big fan of it. How would I fix it? How would I fix it if I'm so goddamn smart? How do I make this better? Because this is it. I don't think that they're inherently bad. I don't think that they don't belong in D&D. It's cool. I think it's fun. I think having a really well constructed plan and having just this little twist of fate kind of brings this extra pressure, brings this extra conflict. I think that's cool. I think it's fun. But I do think it requires something of a light touch. I think it comes down to how you describe the character failing, or how you describe the situation of the crit fail, of the 1. I think it can make a big difference between feeling sort of challenged without feeling like they're being punished for playing the game. I have a 3-point list on how to do crit fails in a good way, how to do the thing good and not dumbly, in a brainly way. So my first is that I don't think, and this is just kind of me, if you want to do it like this, then you can. I just think it kind of sucks. But I don't think a character should ever take damage from a crit fail where rolling a 2 wouldn't also force them to take damage. Let's say you have a trapped door, not a trap door, a trapped door that's got a poison needle or a puff of gas or something like that. If you fail to pick the lock, then you get a prick with the needle. That's fine, cool. The door's trapped. They didn't check it for traps. That's on them if that happens. If they roll a 2 and they get pricked, and they roll a 1 and they still get pricked, cool, fine. I don't that's how the game works. But if a 2 wouldn't do it, if a 2 wouldn't make them take damage, and you're making them take damage from a 1, I think mostly it's unimaginative. It's a kind of a reflex action. It's you roll 1, okay, we'll take damage because that's the easiest thing to do. But it's also just the laziest, I guess. I'm not a fan. I think damage is kind of the most structured and sort of codified form of negative reinforcement that D&D has. If you're taking damage, it should be due to sort of an explicit choice you have made, an explicit risk that you are making for some kind of reward. I'm going to pick the lock of the potentially trapped door to get the reward of getting to the other side of the door. That's fine. That's an acceptable risk. But if it's something like I'm going to climb a tree, and rolling a 2 just means I don't climb the tree. Rolling a 1 means I get stabbed by a branch. I don't like it. I don't like it. You have the AD&D, the 2nd edition, I think it was 2nd edition kind of thing of a table, a D100 table, where kind of 1 is you just kind of mess up and nothing bad happens, and then 100 is you die immediately. I hate it. I hate it so much. I know like it abstracts it. So you roll your 1 and then you need to roll a D100. So like it turns your 5% chance into what, like a 0.05? 0.05? I think. I don't do, like, this is as maths as I get, so, but I think 0.05% chance. And it's fine, but it's still, I think any chance that you could roll the dice and you die as a result of your own incompetence, I just think any chance is too much. There is some cool stuff you can do that I think is fun. Hipsters and Dragons has an excellent kind of like fumble chart for different kinds of attacks and things like that, and I do think that's cool. There are some cool ones like you pull a muscle. It's like you pull a muscle in your upper body or in your lower body, and you get you have kind of like disadvantage on kind of like ability checks. The best one I think is that your weapon breaks, and it's like what is it? If you roll a 1, you roll a D20 again to kind of like work out what happens on the chart. If you roll, I think it's a 1 to 2, your weapon breaks. And then there's like a further abstraction for like if you have a magical weapon, like a +1 longsword or something like that. Like it's even harder to break, but there's still a chance. I think that's cool. It presents challenge kind of like above and beyond just like, oh, what am I gonna do with this like 1d6 damage I just took? And where am I gonna find another weapon? Someone needs to take this dude in front of me down right now so I can steal their weapon. I'm bare-fisted now. I'm just gonna have to wail on this goblin and then steal his scimitar. Like, I think that's cool. I think that's fun. And then you bring it to magical weapons, and like if your magical weapon breaks, where am I gonna find another magical weapon? Where am I gonna find another flame tongue or frostbrand or whatever? I think that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like this fun conflict, this pressure, this kind of fate is kind of against you. I like that rather than just kind of like you take damage or insta-death. That's my first one. Don't deal out damage for a crit fail, at least in a situation where a 2 wouldn't also cause damage, right? The second and third are kind of folded into each other. This is, I think, something that doesn't really get talked about a huge amount. Maybe because just everyone's always been doing it and it doesn't need talking about, or maybe I'm a secret genius. I don't know. I'm probably leaning more towards the first than the second, but I'm gonna say it anyway. So my second point is that dice rolls don't need to be representative of character skill. This is one of those things. It applies to 1s, but it applies to everything. It applies to every number on the D20. The example I have is a wizard rolling a 1 while trying to research like the big bad. The party have met like an evil necromancer. They have learned the necromancer's name, and they're trying to look up information about this necromancer to try and work out how to defeat them. And they roll a 1. I don't think this has to be a 1. Like a 2 would also probably be a fail, right? Let's keep it with 1s because this is what the whole video was about. I think it sucks if the wizard's an idiot for that 1 dice roll. Does that make, like, do you know what I mean? The wizard, your most learned party member, doesn't have any information because they threw up a 1 on like their history check to remember if they've heard this name, or like on their arcana check to know if like they've read a magic book written by them or whatever it is. If they roll a 1, you can use it to inform the game world. I think that's cooler than just going, nope, you suck. I think it's cooler if you sort of like sow some seeds and say that, like, let's say instead of the wizard being an idiot, the necromancer, they have been working tirelessly to expunge the kingdom of any information, any tales, any witnesses, any information about them, to avoid situations like this, to avoid situations where you have a party of adventurers that wants to kill them and is trying to research weaknesses. This is kind of what I mean about not making it all the time representative of character skill. Like I say, maybe I've just realized this and everyone already knew this and it just doesn't get talked about. I've spoken to some friends who said they hadn't thought about it this way. A friend of mine described it perfectly as being like how the Planet Express ship works. So, spoilers for Futurama, but the Planet Express ship doesn't move through space. It has a weird like improbability engine or something that moves space around it. I think that's cool. I think the Planet Express ship is cool, but I think the way, like thinking about it in that way with regards to dice rolls, I think that's cool also. Having the fabric of reality shift around that one. Like, it doesn't feel punitive, and it's also better storytelling. Instead of, no, you rolled a 1, so you suck. And then we have point 3, which is, like I say, folded into point 2, like they kind of lead from each other. Fail forwards. Like the failures, the crit fails should still propel your story forward. This is your D&D Improv 101. It's yes and no but. That's it. I think with crit fails, it just turns into nope. And it's not doing that thing that I think is the most important. It's not rewarding meaningful interaction. Someone rolled the dice. Someone said, I want to do something. And that thing was important enough that it required the dice roll. If you do that, something needs to happen. It can be bad, it can be good, but something needs to happen. The thing can be bad, the thing can be good, but it needs to be a thing. Even if it's a 1, even if you suck, even if the worst thing possible happens, something needs to happen that moves things forward. So let's use our wizard. Let's use this wizard researching the big bad evil guy. Telling your wizard you find nothing. Even if you have like you find nothing because the necromancer has expunged all information about them from the kingdom. It's good, it's almost there, but not quite, because nothing's moved forward, right? And with the 1, you have the worst result you can think of. The worst thing that could possibly happen is very rarely nothing. It's very rarely no, you don't. You have a lot of stuff to play with, especially if we're not making the dice roll representative of character skill. Maybe the wizard remembers a colleague from the academy, from wizard school, who loves collecting information and stories about famous wizards throughout the kingdom, throughout the multiverse, whatever. And maybe now, that colleague, that partner, whoever they are, maybe they've gone insane. Maybe the wizard knows where they live, but they hate the wizard, and they live this weird paranoid existence in a swamp somewhere. Hell, maybe they've struck a deal with a green dragon living in the swamp. Hey, look, I'm gonna hide here and you just keep everyone away. People are gonna come looking for me. You can eat them. It's a shit sandwich, but the shit's not in the middle. The bread is in the middle and you got shit on each side. Like, you have a little crumb of something to move it forward. You don't find any information about this necromancer.
Ooh, that's bad.
But you think you know someone who does know where the necromancer is, or does have information about them.
That's good.
But they live in the zombie swamp.
Ooh, that's bad.
You have something, right? You have something there that's driven the plot forward, and it's given it a source of like genuine conflict. It is absolutely the worst thing that could happen. They're on this quest. They now have to divert the quest to some deadly swamp where someone could die, all to meet this weirdo who has information that they may or may not be able to use. All of this coming from, a well thought out crit fail. Does it make sense? Did any of this make sense? I really hope it did. Don't make crit fails just like damage. They don't necessarily have to be representative of your player's skill. And they should move stuff forward. I think if you can do these 3 things, then you can start thinking about your crit fails in a way that's maybe a bit more fair, or if not more fair, then at least not feeling unfair or not feeling punitive, and in a way that kind of still feels narratively cohesive. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have found it helpful, please comment on the video just down here. If you didn't find it helpful, if you think I'm an idiot, also do that. Do you think that crit fails are good? Do you think that this is a good way to handle them? How do you like to handle crit fails? Or do you have a really, really good crit fail story? Because those are always fun. Despite what I've said, those are always fun. They're always fun to read about. Please, if you have a mind to, you can contribute to my Coffee account, which will be linked in the description. Thank you very much, guys. See you next time, where I will talk more about D&D on another topic. Who knows? The world is my oyster. Okay, goodbye.